Welcome back, guys, to the fitness podcast with your host Kunal, as well as let's start again. I just literally got off when you started laughing. I was like, "Here we go." I've never had to do like take threes on this ever.
Let's just keep going. We'll explain what happened. We just started the podcast and it got a little bit loud.
Yeah, my mic is apparently way too loud for this podcast, but I'm going to roll with it. So yeah, today we want to discuss. Emily, you were quite passionate about this. So was Nate. To be honest, we were having a discussion just before we kickstarted this pod. The honest truth about high performance and what does it look like? Because everyone talks about this recently, especially through social media. There's actually a whole podcast called High Performance Podcast. There's a little community there. I actually pay attention to it quite a lot. So it's quite prevalent in our society now. But shall we dive deep into, I guess, the good, bad, and the ugly, if you wanted to? Let's start with, obviously, you had a story, before we kind of obviously press record, about how this week has gone for you, and the actual raw, honest, look into it. So let's dive deep into it.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm at the place where I had to extract myself from people and the city, and I had said no to quite fun events this week that would have happened this week. Because I had to have an intimate relationship to reality and what I'm capable of taking on right now, because it's so easy to say yes because you're passionate about what you do and you're purposeful driven. But I've recognized lately that my mind is just constantly spinning and it's spinning faster and faster. And I felt like I haven't been able to switch off for such a long time, like mentally, even though I might have taken a Saturday off, or even actually this weekend passing, I barely worked actually, because I went to a wedding. And so I consciously said, I'm not going to work. And then on the Sunday, I had a couple of calls, but then I usually work on a Sunday, but I took the Sunday off and I still couldn't actually relax. I felt really revved up. And so I had to say no to a lot of things happening this week because I need to create space to mentally, I guess, recover and to figure things out. And recognizing that I had maybe a bit too many plates spinning at the same time and a little bit like lack of organization in my head, which doesn't make it easy. And then it's easy to go for the shiny object syndrome and just do whatever feels good in the moment. So yes, I've extracted myself from the city. I've extracted myself from sounds and noise and people. And now I'm here in the summer house again for a week. And we'll see what happens at the end of it. But I've massively failed because I went to bed at like midnight because I sat working until midnight last night. So I massively failed doing what I thought I was going to do, to actually have a curfew and I don't know, sit and meditate and sing Kumbaya. Maybe that's what I thought I was going to do anyway.
How long have you been there for, like in the summer house?
I came late on Monday night, so I've been here for like a day.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like where you are next week, with headspace and so on, right?
It's one of those things where I'm in the same boat. I think we're all in the same boat. I think partly because of the old entrepreneurship role, and effectively you wear so many hats, you spin so many plates, and ultimately you don't have a boss to define your boundaries of when you do certain things. So when you put yourself in that scenario where you don't have rules, you don't have boundaries, and you don't have anyone determining those things, it's almost like you have to create them, but normally you create them out of failures. Like normally when you break, that's when you go, oh, maybe I need to do this more often. Or, oh, I've worked too hard this week, so therefore, oh, maybe I need to do this. And something that I was working on with Angela was that, just even in the example of like holiday time, she's like, well, how many days off a year do you take? I was like, I don't know, whenever I want, or like not at all. She's like, how many days is that? And I said, I don't know. She's like, well, you kind of need some days to then be able to structure it in, right? Otherwise, you never actually go and do it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. So she's like, okay, well, what you need to do is you need to go and take the average amount of days off that people take, and maybe add 5 because you're an entrepreneur, you're in your business, and why don't you just start with that? And like she said like it's something that she deals with as a therapist with all her entrepreneurs and business owners that she works with, is that they are subject to making their own rules. And when they make their own rules, that's when they become more structured and get to have these boundaries and then look after themselves more often. It's the ones that don't have these boundaries in all these areas that then break them and move into that negative place again. So definitely something I've been working on. You know, as you said to the guys before we got on the call today, that today was the first day that I've probably slept until 9 a.m. ever. I didn't start work till 10 a.m. either. And then I'm working in the evenings more now because that's going to work for my lifestyle, and having more free time in the mornings when I'm actually awake and capable is going to be really, really nice. As opposed to getting to the end of the day, working 12 hours or whatever, and then being like, oh, now it's time for free time. It's like, well, free time at 11 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night when you've done 12 hours work is just lie down. You know, that's all you can really muster up at that point. So, you know, for me, those boundaries and those like self-care whilst creating the expectations of growing a business is essential. You know, how much do you put this down to the expectations that you place upon yourself to grow the thing that you're growing right now, Em?
Oh, everything.
Yeah.
But I think it's also because the mountain that you started climbing keeps getting taller as well, because you realize it's an infinite game and there's an endless possibility to keep going. So yeah, but that's so interesting actually. And actually I read it somewhere and I can't remember who does this, but I remember reading it, that is one of, I don't know, maybe it's like Steve Jobs or something. He will actually book in, I think, a week every quarter of the year.
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, yeah. And he will actually be in solitude, and that, like, it's almost like the first thing he books in before everything else, and then after that and before that he will arrange his work. I thought that was quite interesting. So he decides to book his own time in first, and then the rest comes in after that. So
yeah, he calls it thinking time, right?
Yeah.
For his business. Like I actually read a lot about that as well. It's quite interesting. He does it. He has this like location. I don't know where it is now. Nebraska.
Somewhere in the mountains, right? Something.
Yeah,
like
yeah. And he basically spends like a whole weekend, or a week or so, not doing anything apart from just reading. Apparently, that's what he does. And then that's what he focuses on. It's interesting to see someone like, and then you flip it, someone like Warren Buffett. It'd be interesting to see what he does, because he reminds me, he's obviously the old school, right? He's 90 odd years old. He's always gone into work. I've never heard of him taking time off in my life, right? Any article, like the whole time off thing is very, very new if you're an entrepreneur nowadays. I personally believe anyway, purely because of like mental health, you know, this law, you can talk about it way more now than you could maybe 20 years ago. If you're an entrepreneur, if you didn't work, like I think, what do you call it? Mark Cuban says this quite often as well. It's like, if you're not working, what are you doing? It's like, it's one of those where like that was the old mantra back in the day. Nowadays it's more like, you know, we're having a conversation about like just taking time off now, right? But I'm intrigued to see someone like Warren Buffett. Like, what does he do? What does Charlie Munger do? He's right-hand man. Like, he's 94 years old. Like,
but weren't they saying that Warren Buffett had like someone like someone checks his diary and it's like he's got nothing in his diary because all he does is think as a part of his diary. He's at that point now where thinking is his schedule. So I mean, I think at that point it depends on where you are in your business age and how long you've been doing it for and stuff. I think the thing for us is that I think ultimately you've got to define what type of business do you want. Do you want 6-figure business, 7-figure business? Do you want 8-figure business? Do you want a nice little townhouse? Do you want a massive company? What do you want? And then when you create that, then you then can work backwards on that. And if you want that in 2 years, if you want a 7-figure business in 2 years, you're not going to have any time off. If you want a 7-figure business in 15 years, you probably can take some time off. You know, and if you want a 6-figure business in 10 years, then you can definitely take some time off. So, you know, it's all defined on that construct, the expectations that you place upon yourself. Like those guys will have built that business to be the beast that it is and done the dog work for the beast to be it. But people are also, and this is where I think the mistake happens for most people, is that they run at 1,000 miles an hour towards having a 7-figure business, but actually don't want a 7-figure business. Or like they're going at the rate or the trajectory or the expectations that they feel that are around their peers and the people that are around them to go and elevate to that certain level. But actually they don't want that. So therefore, when they're doing the work or they're not having the time off, they're also like, it feels like they're running a race again that isn't their own, which I think is very interesting as well. So, you know, I think defining that terms and expectations, what you want from the business is massive.
That's a big one, by the way. You mentioned about racing, not your own race, but you're racing other people's race. Where do you think that comes from for most people, right? Is it back in the day, obviously, is that whole Mr. Jones, your neighbor would be the first person you'd probably see, and then, oh, they've got Benz, I'm going to get Benz. Like, where do you think that comes from nowadays? Is it because not everyone runs a six-figure business, right? Like, out of, let's say, most friends in a friendship circle group, it would be like 1 out of 10, maybe even none of them, right? We know that. How many people we work with, loads of people in our lives, and not every single one of them was like ultra successful. But then again, if the successful did hang out with successful people, you'd be like 6 of them in a pack, and then suddenly they're all trying to compete against each other. So I know where you're coming from, but where do you think it really comes from?
I think it's the same as when you see pictures of people getting lean. It's the same. I think it's the same subset of mindset of whatever happens. It's that comparison of like, oh, I want to get to that, or I just want that. And it's like, if you question, do you want that? Then that's a different story, right? But as soon as those pictures go up, as soon as you see your mates doing X, Y, and Z, you're like, I want that too. And then you drive towards that, or you use that as fuel, as motivation. But it's like, what do you want? What do you want in the next 10 years? What do you want next week, and go and chase it.
Yeah, but do you think people have to go through a period of like, we spoke about failure and stuff, right? They have to go through a period of like, they have to chase that 7-figure business in order to realize they don't want that 7-figure business. Because eventually, like, if they don't chase for it, they'll never know, like, did I want this or not? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think most people, no. You don't have to. There's not, I think if you should always chase something bigger, but it doesn't have to be whatever that metric is.
It doesn't have to be a number. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a number.
There will be something that you perceive based on learning the subconscious stuff that you believe is success. So therefore, going to chase that is a good thing. But I think by going through the hardships of putting no time off, all the effort, then you can find that spectrum between time off, which is do nothing, and then you've got the balls to the wall. And then over time, you can then determine where you sit on that spectrum and what that means for the growth and what that means for everything in your life. And some people, like, we know people, right? Like, look at Muller, who has always took the coasting chilled road. It's always been great. And like, whereas we'd been going at 1,000 miles an hour next to him, and he still got to the same place that we got to in a reasonable time, but he just took the chill road, and that was his personality. And he was like, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. Whereas, we'd run around like a headless chicken. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, yeah, personality types as well probably determine this, right? It's how we probably are as personality types. Like, we probably don't think, like, we speak a lot about type A's usually. And if you think about Muller as a case study right now, he's probably a type B, just chilled out, I'm going to coast it through. And then eventually, there's always going to be borderlines of like type A, type B. He's always going to go in one or the other. It's like you choose which one you're going to go at. But you mentioned about, waking up at like 9 a.m. Today. Is that the first time? And how did you feel about that, by the way, in terms of your state, your relaxation, your performance so far over the last like couple of hours and so on?
I mean, when I started work at 10, I had 6 jobs to do in a 3-hour period, and I did them in 45 minutes. So like, my productivity was through the roof. But at the same time, there might have just been shit tasks. I don't know, just hyping myself up. But no, I woke up accidentally at 9 because I didn't really put my alarm on. But then I got woken up by the sunshine, so that was good. But I don't know, just you got to give it more days. But it seems to be great and working well for the type of lifestyle that I want. I want to go and get a coffee in the morning and not worry about work, and see the sunshine in the mornings and stuff. And then the rest of the day, I don't mind putting that towards work, So, yeah. But what do you feel like when you said you obviously excluded yourself from the situation, what's going to stop you? What's going to make you be that person, or the boundaries that you want within that environment when you go back? What do you have to do now to kind of be like, I took myself out, what am I going to hold when I get back, when I get there?
Well, first of all, I needed to go back to the drawing board and actually get clarity, because that's the one thing that has been making everything a little bit worse, like the lack of clarity. I do quite a few different projects, and when you don't have clarity around what you need to do next, it's so hard to also have focused work, because then the time that you spend on something is not actually maybe as productive. But I think more so because I live at home with my mom, and she kind of wants my attention when she shouldn't really want to have it, or when I don't want to give it to her. So to extract myself from a place where I'm actually distracted by other people is massively helping me. So it's just time to move out, right? But that adds to the list of life admin, which I feel like I have postponed a little bit because it's been, it's not been urgent to move out. And now it's like, actually, but if I move out, it actually will solve a lot of my problems, which is distraction and like unavoided interactions with people that I would live with. So it's given me a lot of clarity on that. And then also just instilling better time slots that I don't work during the day and actually sticking to them. So actually have planned in a lunch hour, actually have planned in my training. My training time has always been planned in, but actually just those things that needs to happen, and maybe not underestimate how long it takes to make food and eat food, and then maybe not jump into the next call, right? Maybe like buffer a little bit extra time for the things that I should be doing. Like today I had like 3 back-to-back calls, and it really is like, next one and next one, and you don't even have time to go and drink a sip of water, which then means that I'm not drinking water, so I'm not hydrated, and when I'm not hydrated, I'll perform my best. So I think it's just a little bit more of like looking at how much I'm trying to cramp into 1 hour and be a little bit more realistic. I think that's the biggest thing I'm going to take away. Yeah,
the food one's quite big.
Yeah.
Like I think sometimes people, again, we notice entrepreneurs, obviously now we're in the same boat, where you're like, I've got this coming up in 15 minutes. Let me just quickly munch on this. And then we completely forget about our own like digestion and meal hygiene. And then it's literally just like, God damn, what's going on over here?
I was 3 minutes late because I was throwing down a piece of lunch that I hadn't had, because my last meeting ran over by like 26 minutes or something. And I was like, I just need to eat something. And so here I am, yeah. So for sure, like just much better time, like actually respecting the time I planned out for myself more than the time I plan out for others. I mean, those are also very important, but to see it as equal instead of giving it away every time that there is an opportunity to give it away.
Like there was an article that used to say something towards K-Mac, which resonated pretty well. And he used to just say, be ruthless with your time. And like the more I resonate on that, the more jobs and stuff I've got going, I'm like, actually, he was right about that. And it's like one of those things where you're like let's say, for example, you said you were 25 minutes later on a call. Like now, I don't know if I would even let a call run late.
Well, it was my coach, so it was him giving me extra time. But I do that for my clients as well when I feel like we need to run over. It's like, actually, we're not done here, and if I have the time afterwards, I'll be giving that away.
Yeah,
but it's at a cost of something.
Yeah, so like it's the give and the take, right? So like if there was something significant afterwards, I'd be like, sorry, we'll catch up later in the week, as opposed to do the extra 30 minutes that leads into your lunch, that moves on, boom, 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 boom. I just like book another slot in 2 days' time for 30 minutes or something like that. Because that ruthless with the time thing is like, because if one thing goes, then something will go in your day, and it will always be your own self-care. It'll always be your own personal stuff, because the things that you're doing you perceive as important, and they're more valuable than what you perceive yourself for the most part, right? Most people will go, I'm going to do this piece of work, as opposed to say, no, I'm going to take 30 minutes for my lunch, because that work is more important than the lunch. And then if you can do it at the same time, then great, but then you miss out on the value of having a break.
So. Then you're constantly chasing as well, that self-care throughout the week, because you're just like, oh, I missed out on this, and you're like, Jesus Christ, 11 o'clock, what am I doing right now? Like it just keeps chasing. And I think I'm big on being ruthless with time as well, actually. Like nowadays, funny, if I had the client who I wasn't in this podcast and he was like, man, I've been trying to book you for like ages. I'm like, some of the slots I just don't have anymore. I can't give the time like I used to. And even he said to me, like, it's weird because you're a Harrow boy. Apparently there's a whole perception about Harrow boys and stuff like that. I'm like, but I've never seen you anywhere in this place. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't want to put my time somewhere else that isn't going to be useful for me. And I think he was like, yeah, it's quite rare for people in Harrow, like hardly people like even people know you but never seen you around. I'm like, yeah, I prefer that, because last thing I want is to be left, right, and center everywhere, and then just giving my time everywhere else. And then, if you do that, suddenly you're missing out on something else that's important to you. So you've got to look at like your highest importance in terms of like what is the most important thing for you on a day-to-day basis. Is it business, your health, family, all that kind of stuff, and then work your way backwards from that. And I feel like most people probably don't do that enough. They're
Yeah.
just like, whatever comes to them, yes, I'm gonna do it. Yes, yes, yes. And then I probably did that early in my career, I reckon, I'd say. But it was the right time for me to do it early in my career versus like now. I think now it's just a completely different ballgame. So I'd probably say I'm way more ruthless now than I've ever been.
Isn't it like just the whole? I always refer it back to dating, right? At the beginning, when you're running off fumes and you've got no one coming through the door or going on dates, you're like you're gonna take anyone, and it's not gonna be ruthless with your time. You go, yeah, no worries, I'll go on a date with you on a Tuesday night. Yeah, Thursday, no worries. But then when you start getting like an influx of more prospective people, you start to be a bit more ruthless with how many dates you go on and which ones are better than others. And it's the same type of process, right? I mean, I've never been there, so I won't know, but just hypothetically, that's what it sounds like that happens. So like you pick the best looking one, or the one that's had the better chat on Tinder, or the one that tickles your pickle a little bit more than the other one, and then you are a little bit more ruthless with who you go on a date with, because that's beneficial for you. As opposed to if 7 people on Tinder match, you'd be going out Monday to Sunday every night, and then that wouldn't be great.
Yeah, I mean,
imagine that much small talk. It'd be fucking horrible.
Yeah, you just wasted like hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours potentially, and you're just thinking, Jesus Christ. And you miss out on certain things, right, for yourself, usually. Whether it's like, I don't know what it is. But also like switching off, like let's get into that topic. Like obviously we spoke about like kind of, you're in a summer house right now. What are you doing to like switch off? Like, because you could be on your own right now and your mind could still be running at 1,000 miles per hour, in my opinion, because you're like, I'm alone, there's nothing else to do. It's just like, this is it. So what are you doing right now in order to switch off completely?
Well, I haven't.
If you are. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
I didn't switch off last night. I set up and I was actually mapping out things. But I ended up also having I thought, okay, I'm gonna try and switch off with some Netflix. It's been a while since I put on Netflix. And then I put on this gene modification series where they actually modifying genes. And I was like, that's interesting. And then I kept having things on in the background. And then, it's like, oh, but what happens in the next episode? Now I need to know what's actually going to do. Are they going to go through with it? So I ended up having Netflix on in the background, partially looking and partially drawing, we can say, out my mind mapping. And ended up going to bed a little bit late. But today is a new day and we can try again. So, yeah, but I think just actually taking off screen time, that's the one thing that you can do. If you by nature work at your desk with a screen, it makes total sense to not have a screen that will trigger you to work, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't like mindlessly, I don't ever window shop. I don't do shopping online. I don't do anything online that isn't work. I actually don't really use my laptop for anything but for work. So if I don't want to work, I cannot be on my laptop, right? And actually, I've deleted my social media apps from my phone. So I'm actually not scrolling mindlessly either. I guess I could just be reading, going for a walk. I don't know, brushing my hair, washing my hair.
Do you just say brushing your hair?
Yeah, things that I don't normally do, basically.
That's it.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, I've just recognized it as a real struggle for me. And I don't think I mentioned it. I don't maybe I mentioned, but I'm going to have an investigation if I have ADD, because it feels like I have something going on, which actually is like a cause to this as well. Even though I think by the lifestyle that you live, you condition yourself to be in a way as well.
Yeah.
So it could just be nature nurture, and that I've lived in a very revved up place for a little bit too long, and then not having these boundaries put in place to actually calm myself down. So I don't know. That's just my honest answer. I don't know.
Yeah. So for you, it's like figuring out what your boundaries are, your rules are over the next maybe this year, basically, and saying, okay, look, this is what I want to achieve probably in 2022, and this is how I'm going to relax, and this is how I'm going to do this, which I think is I think most people's struggles usually. If you're not working, the remote side of the remote lifestyle, everyone wants it, but no one realizes it's actually quite difficult because naturally you've got your laptop open right now. We've got laptop open. You can still get triggered by something else, by work, like a notification come in, whatever. Most people don't have notifications, but anything can happen. And you're like, let me check this, because you've got it in front of you. And you're right, even I tend to sometimes do that often as well. If I'm watching Netflix, I'm like, oh, let me check my email real quick. I don't need to check my email.
Yeah.
Like, there's no need. Like, I need to have I can
And
have
then
a boundary.
And then you realize you have Netflix running in the background and you're like checking your emails, and then you go back and like, I didn't watch any of that.
Yeah, you're like, I have no clue what happened in this episode, and you're like, yeah, let me just go to the next episode anyway. And then you're trying to like piece
Yeah.
it together, and you're like, yeah, I think this is what happened. And then you tell people, yeah, I watched it, and then you're like, and they have a completely different like scenario to what you think happened. And you're like, I need to rewatch this or whatever. That's why I just watch rewatch stuff. Like literally, I will not watch anything that I haven't watched before. Like I've done. I need to actually think about it. I'm like, I literally read it the other day. It's like it's based on anxiety, and I'm like, all right, am I anxious then? Is there a reason why I'm watching Sopranos every freaking year? Because I know what's going on. So I'm like, oh, I need to like figure out. But when I watch new TV shows, I also get bored very quickly for some reason, because they're not as intriguing as like the old TV shows I used to watch. So I'm just like, this is a bit crap.
But I think also recognizing how you decompress. And I also seen that like this month has been crazy in terms of social events and weddings and parties. And therefore I haven't had the space to decompress, which then compounds and feeds into a negative cycle of just chasing something that you can't be chasing. So yeah, it's just been for me, like I didn't need to exclude myself from the city, but I could. And I really, really like loneliness, like being alone. I don't like being lonely. I don't necessarily feel very lonely, but I like to be alone. It helps me think. It helps me, ground myself. So even though I'm still working, the lack of other people's presence in my life helps me just process what it is I'm going through, right? So yeah. So it's not a negative thing. It's just that I had the opportunity. I could go down here. And yeah, why not?
Makes sense.
But it has
Nate,
been,
what about?
yeah.
Go on, finish off.
No, but it has been just this feeling, right? Sometimes you just can't explain it. It's just a feeling that there's something going on and you just need to like take some time to like reflect on it. So to go away from your normal environment can sometimes help you get that perspective, right?
Yep.
So,
I think it does for most people, because I think they need it, right? That's why holidays are great, because you just naturally just like come out of the environment and you're like, actually I needed that because of this reason. But Nate, what about you? Like terms of switch off, right? You've got different things you like to do, etc. Like what's the best thing you've done to kind of like when you switch off, you're like, actually, no, I love this element.
Yeah, I'm slowly learning that it's not really switch off, it's just switch over. I think that's the thing for me, is that like I'm not gonna change my personality type to be like all zen and stuff all of the time. I just like to switch what I'm doing so that it's the focus. You get a mental refresh, and as long as you're looking after your day, you'll get a physical refresh too. So for me, it's like just that switch over. So switch over to doing experiences, booking stuff in the diary. I think the biggest thing out of all of it is personal stuff and self-care stuff won't get done unless it's diarized or it's like booked in. So going to that meditation class, going to reading at this time, between this time and this time, journaling between this time and this time, and booking an experience, traveling around doing all that type of stuff and being like, I'm going to go and do this for half a day or this for this. And people don't book in enough to be able to then switch over, so that when they do come to the time that they have as rest, they just end up doing multiple things because they don't really know what they're doing. Like you said before about Sopranos, right? I genuinely feel the reason why you watch reruns is because when you watch new stuff, you're not interested by it because you've watched all the stuff you want to watch. There's nothing new that's interesting you on this. Like if something came out about mobsters and gangsters, you'd watch it, right?
Which I did, yeah.
Yeah, but you watched it already. So therefore, that's what my thing is that if you get to the evening, you got that hour to watch Netflix, but you've already watched everything you want to watch. If you watch the new stuff, you end up doing other stuff because you're not switched over.
Engaged,
yeah.
You're most likely. But for me, that's why I prefer sports as like my switch over. Yeah. Like, obviously, you know about Innate, like, we did a whole month in the States watching it. And I was like, that was also a really good experience because it was also like, we always had something to look forward to. So we never felt like, if you looked at it you told someone right now, we did this amount of traveling, like Nate was driving every single day. We also had like a boatload of check-ins to do. We had loads of things going on around that. And we also met clients, we were, having chats with them and so on. most people would get burnt out from it. We were actually like fairly refreshed most of the time. Obviously, there's some days we were like, oh my goodness, this is tiring right now. But majority of the time, like I remember the early part of the trip, we were super refreshed. We did like 3 flights back to back, right? But we were refreshed for no reason, and we're doing check-ins on the plane. Like, but we were like, it was a different environment, and obviously the environment just made us feel like, wow, this is amazing. So sometimes, yeah, for me, watching sports as well. I guess it's also the unknown of sports. So you never know what's going to happen. So you have to be engaged. Whereas you can watch a TV show and, I can go backwards and think, all right, you know what? I know what's going to pop up in 20 minutes time. Or, I know what, I can just go read about the episode and I know exactly what's happened. So I think sometimes for me, the easiest way to switch, I guess you can call it switch off, switch over, is always been sports. I don't know why. I don't know if there's a rationale for it, a reason for it, but yeah, I've always found I enjoy it. It's also, I guess, if you watch live sports as well, there's a whole like exhilarating factor to it. Like, if you ever seen like a last minute winner, you're gonna be through the roof, right? You're literally, everything is like, you forget about everything, to be honest. That's why I think, I read something about like, why do most like, people live for football? And I was reading about like the local like football fans. Why do they all go? Obviously, fans are back in the stadium now and stuff like that. They're like, they miss that because it's part of their ritual, right? So you go to the pub with your mate at like 1:00 in the afternoon, and then you walk up to the ground together. You do this together. It was part of a whole ritual thing. So it's also like it's a tribalism thing, isn't it? It's a religious thing. Like you do it together. So therefore, when that got taken away, like a lot of football fans actually went into depression and stuff like that. It was weird. But they generally did. And then you look at back in now, everything's kind of back to normal. I haven't been back yet to a football game, but I'm probably going to be back very, very soon. But I can imagine, I know, Nate, you went in America, right?
Yeah, it was really, really good to go back. I was like, as much as like not into that football that much anymore, it's that purpose of that weekend. We're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do it with this people and this. And, it's that planning, structure, time away or time different than the stuff that they're doing. So it just takes you away.
Yeah. Like there's actually documentaries about hooliganism and hooligans, right? They start their prep on like Thursday. They would go to like, I remember seeing it. It was like on the 80s and stuff like that. They would go to like, what's that hooligans like? What they love? Stone Island? Is it that's the one? Jackets. They go and buy like those jackets. They'll get ready, get a haircut on a Friday. And then by like morning on a Saturday, they're already drinking for the 3:00 kickoff. So like by 9:00 they're drinking. It's a whole day out. And then eventually it's like the game finishes obviously by like 5:36. You go out that night. And then by Sunday, that's the only day to relax. But it's like you can see it's a 3-day preparation, 2-day preparation for that particular event. So it's definitely interesting seeing how people relax and what people tend to do. With remote nowadays, it's far more difficult, I'd say, because before people relax by watching Netflix, but now on your laptop, now you have work on your laptop, now you have this. I think COVID probably like messed that up, right? Because most people worked in an office, right? So when you come back home and you're like, okay, I can still use a laptop because I have no work on my laptop. Whereas for us, like it's a bit different. Even probably people who work from home now anyway can resonate to this episode and think, actually I'm going through this.
A lot of people even sit and work in their kitchen, right? So all of a sudden you're messing out the place where you're supposed to just sit and have a meal as well. So so it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. So.
Definitely interesting. We'll be back next week to kind of see what Emily's findings are after a week in the summer house. Summer house sounds like is it Top Boy? Top Boy, was it called Summer House, Nate? It's like Emily's running a drug mule right now.
Yeah, I'm reconsidering my career here. It's a meth lab in the back garden.
It's a Breaking Bad episode, basically.
Like 10 utes running underneath her.
Yeah, basically. Swedish utes or mini Zlatans. So we'll be back. We'll obviously see where Emily's at with that one and back with another topic as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to obviously DM us individually or, feel free to mention check-ins. On top of that as well, share this with friends and family. Shout out to Trinidad and Tobago. You keep on listening. We still haven't had a DM yet. Nathan, have you had a DM yet?
No.
Nah, he's saying no. Emily, not yet. We're waiting for one at least. If you drop us a DM, say I'm that Trinidad and Tobago listener, we'll give you a shout. So yeah, it's gonna be a big one. And your business shout potentially if you have a business. Nate, you want to say anything?
I'm good.
Nope. He's all.